Hello and welcome to this new episode of Open Book Entrepreneur. Today we have Alyssa Pertjum here with us, and she's a fantastic memoir coach. So, Alyssa, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, Tony. Thanks so much for having me. So, I'm a memoir coach and also a developmental editor and an award-winning indie author. And the truth of it is, I have had a lifelong love affair with words and all things books since childhood. And I followed that thread all the way to adulthood to get my Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing. And ultimately, even though now most of my world is helping people bring books into the world based on their lived experience, I think truly the magic of the work that I do is helping people come home to themselves by making meaning from their lived experience. So I kind of like to say that I'm a light worker masquerading as a book coach. And the book is really just the byproduct because really what ends up happening is people end up understanding more of who they are and what their journeys on this earth have meant. And it all gets wrapped up in this beautiful book that helps, heals, and offers hope.
Great. And I know as well that you actually, in 2019, you left your 9 to 6 job and with only 2 months of living expenses and a prayer. So, what gave you the courage to take that leap?
So, what's interesting about this particular story is it wasn't one brave decision. It was kind of the accumulation of particular events that happened in a season of my life where everything was unraveling. So, I was grieving a miscarriage, I was navigating a divorce, I was solo parenting half the week for the first time, and then I lost a promised promotion at my day job. So, there was like nothing left of what I thought life at that point in time was supposed to look like. It was just kind of like, all right, clearly this old this old life no longer fits and there's something else that I'm meant for. And I kind of reached a point of surrender of just like, I have no idea anymore what adulthood is supposed to be like. Somebody please show me. And when I got to that point and stopped forcing this old plan or this old lifestyle, interestingly enough, the right books, the right people, the right podcasts, all these things kind of started pointing in one direction, and that direction was entrepreneurship. And so I was like, all right, well, nothing else could possibly break or fall apart because it all has. So this is the opportunity to try to build a life and a profession around my education, my love of words, my passion. And so I started a little side business and worked at it for about 6 months until I had 2 months of living expenses and said, okay, I'm gonna pull the plug and see what happens. And I figured if I need to go back to a regular job, I'll find my way back to a regular job. But I'm going to regret more not trying this if I don't than the risk of actually leaving and giving it a shot. And so I kind of permitted myself to at least try.
Exactly. So what led you to focus specifically on helping courageous women turn difficult life experiences into meaningful memoirs?
So I love this question. This is a beautiful question. Because the reality is that my passion for women's voices started a long time ago, before I even knew that being a memoir coach was a possibility. As a little girl, I sensed that women weren't always given the same space to be heard and believed. Sometimes that was in real life, sometimes that was in the books I read or the movies that I watched. And then when I got into graduate school, I was getting a graduate certificate in women's studies. I was teaching women's studies as well for my assistantship. It was paying for my tuition. And that started to give me language for what I had learned as a kid, but didn't have a language for. And I was very interested in recognizing whose stories got preserved and whose didn't. And then when I found myself working in domestic violence and rape crisis, it got reinforced that a lot of women end up silenced and shamed and dismissed or taught to question their own truth. And so by the time I became a memoir coach, I already had this belief that being able to speak and tell our stories and say what happened to us was an act of healing, was an act of reclaiming our voice, and even the possibility of like a quiet activism. And so it's not a surprise that by the time I got to doing memoir coaching, a lot of women just kind of naturally found me. And when they found me and they connected with me and they had a conversation, they felt safe with me. And so here I found myself kind of just helping women. And so now we transform those experiences into memoirs. We create healing for them, hope for somebody else. And even though I will work with just about anybody, if they're the right person who feels called to tell their story, women have just kind of had a natural, special place in my heart always.
Exactly. And you help women write their memoir they wish they had during the hardest chapter of their lives. So what does that mean to you?
So I really think that most of the people who come to me are writing the book that they wish they had had at the time. So a lot of people will say, I was looking for a book that would show me that this unique experience I went through was possible to survive. And I just didn't quite find it, right? And so now what they're usually trying to do is write that book so that it provides like a guide to the next person who's going through said thing. And um, we can't prevent anybody from going through the experiences that a lot of memoirs are about. We can't help people avoid grief or divorce or substance addiction or poverty or illness, assault, infertility, right? But we can offer a lifeline and say, you're going to get through it. You're not alone. I've been there too. And that works wonders, right? Just somebody saying, I got you. And I know it's hard, but there is another side to this thing. And let me be a little voice in the darkness to kind of help you move through to the light. And so, really, I feel that memoirs can be an act of service to others. And my goal is to help people make sure that their story does that, that the goal is not just for the memoir to be this kind of cathartic healing, I'm helping myself get through it. It's also about how does it transform the reader on the other side? Because you really need the reader to be resonating with your message. It can't just be about what it does for you.
Exactly. So many people feel called to share their story, but question whether they have the right to tell it or if they can do it properly. So why is giving ourselves permission to tell the truth so important?
I think because people wait for permission to come from other people, right? We want other people to say, yeah, go do that thing, go for it. And unfortunately, even those who love us and support us and want to see us happy and successful and thrive, um, you know, no motivation is going to be more powerful than the one that's coming from within, right? That's why the only time that you can truly change anything in your life is when you really want it. Other people can want you to be healthier, happier, right? More successful. But unless you really want it, like you're never going to actually make a change. You're never going to actually do the thing that's going to get you healthier, happier, more successful, right? And the same thing I think goes with permission. Other people can tell you to go for it, but a lot of time we don't get that. We get a culture and a society who often encourages people, especially women, to stay quiet or small, to keep the peace, don't be confrontational, protect everyone else's comfort. We have like we have a big culture, I think, sometimes of people pleasing. Some people might argue with me on that. They might say, no, we have a really selfish culture, and there's not enough people, kind of doing things for others. But a lot of the people who've come to me, they're people pleasing more than anything else. They're catering and they're serving and they're giving everything they've got to everybody around them, but not necessarily getting that in return. And I think that we need to give ourselves permission to tell the truth about our lives because nobody else is going to tell us to do that. It's an act of power, it's an act of reclamation, it's an act of honoring our lived experiences, telling the truth as we experienced it. And we can find a way to do that with compassion and boundaries and protecting other people's privacy and not dragging people through the mud. So it's a delicate thing to tell your story, because it's not like your story isn't going to intersect with somebody else's. You're not going to be able to tell your story without telling about other people. But there are ways to do it where it feels like you can take up the space that you need to without interrupting or disrupting a bunch of other people's lives.
And what separates a memoir that simply or just documents what happened from the one that heals, helps, and truly matters?
This is another really great question because this is where people really get it wrong a lot of the time. The difference between one that just documents what happened and one that talks about why it matters is meaning. So when somebody's just documenting this happened, then this happened, then this happened, that's more of an autobiography. It's a different type of genre. It's still nonfiction. It's still written by the author about the author's lived experience, but it's really just giving us, and then what happened, and then what happened, and then what happened. And a lot of people aren't that interested in normal people's daily lives. We might be interested about a celebrity or a politician or a Nobel Peace Prize winner, and we might want to know all about them because we find them fascinating and extraordinary. But when a normal person that doesn't have any particular claim to fame is just giving us the day by day diary, readers are going, why do I care? What does this even mean? Why am I spending my time reading about this nobody's everyday life, right? But a memoir takes a human's experience, zeroes in on a particular theme or moment in time or season, and says, these things happened, and here's what I learned from it. Here's what it meant. Here's how I discovered this really interesting thing about myself or about this particular type of lived experience. And when you talk about what you've been through and what it means, then the reader can go, ah, okay, I remember having a time like that myself where I learned X, Y, or Z and how powerful it was. So reader and author connect through the meaning of something, through where they can relate to one another, versus like, here's the day that I was born, here's what happened when I turned 5, this is what happened when I turned 12, right? A lot of that is insignificant detail. But when the author can show a reader, this is what it meant to feel alone. This is what it meant to feel like I wanted to belong somewhere. This is what it was like to go through loss all on my own. Then the reader's digging in and going, tell me more. I need to hear what you have to say.
And yeah, speaking of this, how do you help writers create structure in this emotional depth while keeping their authentic voice and protecting the parts of their story maybe they're not ready to share?
Yeah, so this is where like all of my past lives merge together. So I have the Masters of Fine Arts in Creative Writing. So I'm formally trained in what makes a memoir a memoir. So part of what I do is teach writers, okay, this is what a memoir is. These are the characteristics. These are the ways that you craft a memoir. This is how you do character development and scene and dialogue. And this is how we shape the story, right? But then I have a undergraduate degree in psychology. I've worked in mental health. I already shared that I worked in domestic violence. So I take all of that people skills, the emotional intelligence of people, understanding people's emotions and trauma. And so then I'm approaching them at the same time from more of a human perspective, right? Wow, that must have been really painful. That must have been really hard for you to go through. Do you need to take a moment to process some of those emotions? Some of my clients say that it's like therapeutic work, but I don't claim to have a license in
Hmm.
therapy. I didn't quite get that far, but I do bring those elements to the work that I do so that the people feel safe with me and trying to figure out how to turn this experience into something written, right? So those are two pieces. And the third piece is my kind of industry knowledge, my strategic brain. I'm an author myself. I've gone through this. I understand what it means to be in that slog of drafting and revising and drafting and revising. And I know what the publishing options are. I know how to work with editors and cover designers. So the things that first-time authors don't know anything about, I've already done it. So I can bring that part of the piece of pie kind of as well to this work that we do. And so they're getting how to craft the story, how to think like an author, and then what to do next when the manuscript is done, kind of all wrapped into one.
And your book, Dear Universe, I Get It Now, explores bravery, identity, and trusting yourself. How did writing it help you reclaim your own voice?
So, interestingly enough, we've talked a lot today about permission, right? And how telling your own truth allows you to honor your experience and bring back to you maybe something that's been lost. And writing my memoir, Dear Universe, I Get It Now, helped me realize how much of my life I spent looking outside of myself for the permission and the validation and the direction to basically do what I'm doing now. I needed to choose for myself that I was going to go ahead and pursue this path regardless of what anybody else said. If anybody else could understand or believe that working with books could be a lucrative, business that it could keep the lights on, if you will, and pay the bills. I spent too much time waiting for other people to believe enough in me. I needed to figure out how to believe in myself. And when I wrote Dear Universe, I Get It Now, I started to recognize that this very kind of long and winding journey, there always had been strength, there always had been resilience, there had always been particular pivotal moments that I realize now were all kind of teaching me what I needed so that I could eventually get onto the path where I am now. And so everything was always pointing in this direction. I just couldn't see it when I was like living it. And so the act of writing that memoir not only helped me rediscover I was already on the path the whole time. It looked like I was on a detour, but I wasn't. I just had certain lessons I needed to learn before I got to a certain part in the path. And not only that, but it taught me about independent publishing. It taught me how to help my authors, right? Because I first learned how to help myself. And it also showed future authors that I worked with, like, hey, I've been there. I've done the hard thing. I am not going to just like feed you words without having any action behind them. I have actually walked this path. And so when I speak to you about you walking the path, I'm doing it from a genuine, authentic place. I'm not doing it from somebody who's never been there.
And you're also now building your flagship memoir program as your main offer. So, who is this designed for, and what journey do you guide writers through?
So I'm really excited about this. So the Memoir Studio is now kind of the new way I'm working with memoirists. And by new, I just mean I'm taking all the one-to-one work that I've done in the last few years and I've packaged it up a little bit differently. So now this is for first-time memoirists. It's like a 9-month kind of container where they get me as their thought partner, their strategist, their guide, their advocate, and I help them move through 3 pieces. One is clarifying their story. That's where we're going to figure out what they're trying to say and how it kind of maps along the story arc. Then we go into drafting the manuscript with me right there by their side, putting words on the page for the first time. And then I help them refine it. I teach them how to be an editor of their work, to really get the manuscript dialed in so that it's ready for them to shop to publishers. And all along the way, right, we're figuring out how to tie it back to their motivation, mission, and message so that every move, every act, every decision we make in that manuscript is really tied back to those foundations and those fundamentals. So they're learning memoir and they're learning how to be an author and they're learning about their publishing options. And it's all highly like highly personalized, high touch experience. They're supported the entire time and they walk away on the other side with a full manuscript that they're really proud of. So I would say that this is for the first-time memoirists who know that they don't want to just check it off the list. They don't want shortcuts. They don't want to skip steps. They want to truly embody what it means to be a writer. They want to learn what it means to craft a really amazing book. They're tied to quality and depth and meaning more than speed and cutting corners.
Great. And if people want to actually get in touch with you, Alyssa, or learn more about you, connect to you, and also maybe check out your programs, how they can do that?
So, best way to start is to come on over to my website. That's the right place, right time. The first right is WRITE, and the second is RIGHT. So, just so that people aren't confused. So, the right place, right time. And you'll be able to see there my different offers. You can book a call. I offer a free 30-minute story stroll, which is a super relaxed conversation over Zoom. We have a chance to talk about where you're at with your book, questions you have about writing and publishing, and if you're interested in learning how I work, I can answer those questions at that time as well. You can find both of my books wherever books are sold. So bookshop.org, Amazon, you put in Dear Universe, I Get It Now, and my last name, you should be directed. And my other book, Do Not Write a Book Until You Read This One, can also be found anywhere you shop. Also, put in my last name. You should be able to pair the two together. And I'm just looking forward to talking to anybody who's interested in getting started.
Great. So, anyone watching us, you can check out the links in the description of this episode and connect to Alyssa. And then on top of that, Alyssa, thank you so much for being a guest today. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for, like sort of giving us these great tips as well. And yeah, it'll be nice to see you all in the next episode. So thank you very much and bye bye.
Bye. Thanks, Tony.